Hi, so I have a question for all of you. How exactly did you get into the voice acting business?
How long was your panel?
Stand-up comedy, I did impressions, and it just took off from there.
Look how quickly she did that.
Yeah, short version,
Get
internet.
out of the way now. Now you boys take over.
Scene. First of all, one of the things I always say, people ask, like, how did you get into it? Like, I call it kind of a disorder or a disease that I've always had since I was a child. Like, I just couldn't stop doing voices or mimicking or imitating the things I heard. I also moved around a lot as a kid, so I was always being sort of just airlifted and dropped into a random, I lived in Italy, I lived in Texas, I lived in New York. I moved around a lot. So wherever I did, like, voices helped me assimilate, learning or hearing how everybody moved. And so sort of paying attention to the differences in the way people spoke became a kind of self-protection for me. So that's what I was doing long before. I was always involved in acting because my father was a theater professor. So I was sort of already immersed in acting and theater, but I wasn't a professional actor kid. But when I did target acting professionally, I sort of knew that I had a facility that really separated me from the crowd in terms of voices. But I was living in New York at that time, and there wasn't as much of the kind of work we do. There was probably more of it now, but there really wasn't much then. There were only a few cartoons. I think I did Courage the Cowardly Dog, was one of the first things I ever did, and that was in New York. And I did like 50 different voices for the original Celebrity Deathmatch on MTV.
I did that too.
I did like 50 different celebrity voices. And again, I was always a mimic, but I didn't know, I'd never had the assignment like, do this person. Like I always say, we all have somebody we do. Our dad, our aunt, our crazy teacher.
The casting person.
Yeah, everybody has an impression whether they know it or not. And I always did voices that I was attracted to or thought were funny, but to sort of do it on command was a whole other thing. And at that show, like they would just send out who was going to be on the show that week. And they had it was so cheap, they had like an 800 number you would call in and do the impression.
Yeah.
There was no script, you would just sort of, I'm gonna do Slash right now, I'm gonna do Robin Williams right now, and that's what, but I made a tape. What happened was I had booked a job by a word of mouth, and that I had auditioned for through a friend of mine was auditioning people one day, and she said, ugh, I gotta listen to all these people. They gotta do like Bill Clinton and Ross Perot and an alien child. I was like, well, I can do that. She said, why don't you come in? So I auditioned that day, and I was the only one without an agent, and I booked it. So there happened to be an agent there from another agency named John Wasser.
Oh, I know who John Wasser is.
Whatever.
Wasser is,
he gave me his card, and he said, okay, come meet with me, and I'll tell you what you need to do. Or so I thought. And he gave me this tape.
That's never good for women to get that
He gave
card.
me a tape at the time of a guy who was their top guy. And I was very arrogant and really young, and I was like, I hate this guy. He sucks. He sounds like all those guys that did Fruit Loops commercials when I was a little kid, and he probably was. He was probably in his 60s then. We're talking before you were born. And so I thought, I'm going to do something really original. And I'm going to make a really wild tape with voices and sound effects. And it was like this amazing flowing, but agents didn't get it. So one of my advices to you, my advice to you is, one, you have to have a tape, and you have to have it produced by somebody who is
That means an
in the
MP3,
business.
Yeah, I was going to say, that
an
means
MP3.
audio file.
And figure out
to be real to
what
real.
voice, figure out what it is you want to do, whether it's cartoon voices, whether it's radio commercials, whatever it is, take a class, and it's always best to take a class where you can hear the other actors. Because sometimes what you learn in a class is not what you don't know, but what you already do know and didn't know you knew. And so produce a tape by somebody because agents have to hear exactly what they heard on TV last night or on the radio last night or whatever. if you're super and imaginative and creative and out of the box, creative people will think it's amazing, and they all did love my tape. Every time I gave it to agents, they're like, I don't get it. I don't know what that is you're
It also
doing."
has to be short and good.
Yeah.
Like if it's a little bit too long and starts to get not good, then it's just anything that's not phenomenal.
Anything that's bad is not good, guys.
Yeah, short, short
point
and good,
and
because they don't have a lot of time. Like, it's not like looking at a headshot and knowing, like, oh, that person. It's like they have to sit down, listen to the thing, and it usually takes about, a few minutes. And to do that to 10 people a day, you spend an hour,
I was under the misnomer, if you just show how talented you are, they'll think you're great and they'll represent you. No, they want to hear literally finished product that you could hear tonight on television, so that they can immediately go out and pitch you to ad agencies or Netflix or networks or
Also,
whatever.
get an online following, TikTok, Twitch, like all that stuff really matters now. It didn't
Yeah.
used to. I used to tell people, do plays, do stand-up. I still think improv is a really great skill, and casting people do go to improv shows if you're funny, and but if you can get some kind of following, even people that aren't good get shows because they
me.
just have following. He's a prime example. I
am
didn't
a
want to
prime
say
example.
it out loud with him here, but yeah.
Go, guys.
No, he's next.
I used to talk like this, but then somebody said somebody else sounds like this, so I had to change my voice. I wound up
Give your demo in a phonograph, basically.
only one voice. No, but
I thought it was pretty good, to be honest with you.
you never know
very
what you're
good,
gonna run into, But anyway, I was as a kid doing voices of relative. Well, I grew up. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but then we moved to Ohio in the suburbs, and I wound up seeing the same people over and over again. So after a while, they dig into your personality. So I started imitating relatives and friends that always was in the neighborhood, and that led to me saying, where can I do something with this? And I had a local radio station in Ohio that I threw it out there. And I said, hey, I do voice kind of things. And they said, yeah, call up and just call in doing one of those characters, because it's something new for that kind of community. So I started calling in as a kid. I think my first voice was a guy named Louie. I said, hi, this is Louie. And so you have this like 12-year-old kid calling in and talking tough in the middle of the country of Ohio. And so then as that progressed, I said, I'll check out the radio business, because the big voice people in the country had been Mel Blanc and Paul Winchell and all, and this was in the 70s, so it wasn't prominent to say I want to do voiceovers and all that. But I got into radio, from everything from producing to playing around on the radio, and all this was before the professional days. I professionally got started in 1982. So this was all the warm-up to eventually wanting to do it professionally. And when I came to Los Angeles, I was taking voiceover workshops and happened to be at one as an observer. And this guy just moved into town to do some work on the radio in L.A. And I said, well, I did radio stuff, so I'll take a listen to what he's doing. He says, I need some voices for my radio show. And I went, that's what I do. And I did my impressions like everybody else in the room did. Each one got to go up to the microphone and play for him. And they were doing Nixon and voices, Dudley Moore, people who were famous in the 70s. And I said, well, I'm just here to watch, but I do some. He said, oh, what do you do? I said, hi, my name's John Travolta, and I really like watching your show, And he says, I'm on the radio, John. And I was like, yeah, I think so, right? And so I did John. I was going, hey, it's Steve Martin. Can I do something for you today? And he just said, give me a call in a couple days. So his shows start taking off in L.A. His name was Rick Dees. So he bounced around. He was on KHJ at the time. Then he went on to Kiss FM, became one of the biggest radio announcers in LA. I mean, when I say big, it was where him doing a commercial on his show was in four figures, which never happened before in LA radio as long as it did. So I did a character called John Revolting. We called him Travolta, but then he got word. People are saying, "Is that really Travolta? You can't do that." So because nobody could see it. So we had to change it to John Revolting, and we did venues, and I did the 18,000 people at the LA Forum with a warm-up show with Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers on New Year's Eve. So this whole voice thing led to all sorts of things. And so I worked with Rick for about 20 years, just because I am a performer. So I also was in comedy acting workshops. I also went to Second City, National Lampoon, and the Groundlings, training there. So it all came from, all these voice jobs came from things that I did related to it. And but professionally in '82 was when it really all started for me, and it led from me doing a show called Robot Man and Friends, which was a takeoff of a comic strip that was in the LA Times and a few other syndicated papers. And then that was '82, '84. I get an audition for the Muppet Babies. For Jim Henson's going to start his first animated Saturday morning cartoon. And I was chosen to be Fozzie Bear and Scooter for that. Again, the comedy background helps.
Being Fozzie Bear, the bear that tells the jokes. Waka waka. And then Baby Scooter was a complete opposite, and he talked like this. And he was always whining, but he always was the intelligent one on the computers and all that.
So those are some of the things that sprinkled my career. But yeah, it started doing voices and all that. That was what you were asking, how you get started.
I guess I'll do my condensed version. I already kind of touched on it a little bit. I was inspired by Transformers. Peter Cullen's voice was like, just blew me away. And I was like, I want to just be the voice that people go, holy crap, you hear that voice. And I started studying. I was between the era of compact disc demos and MP3 demos. So I was right there in between that era. And there was a local studio called Studio Center in Memphis, Tennessee, where I'm from, and I just didn't think there was anything like voiceover related to in my area. And it was like, what's the worst they can do? Say no, right? So I went on and tried them out. They were blown away. It's like, hey, can you come back? They signed me December 1st of 2008, and by February 11th, I'd booked my first gig, and I booked, like one a month. I thought I was doing badly. And then through the power of the internet and YouTube, it's like it opened up the gate. Don LaFontaine had passed away, and my first manager was just looking through YouTube. And if you didn't know, YouTube's the second largest search engine next to Google. And I showed up on the page because I had a lot of views, kind of like how your niece Brizzy did.
Yes,
So it's just like, hey, I think you have a lot of raw talent. I think I'd like to work with you on some real movie trailers. I kind of thought it might have been a scam that they just, because they were asking for my social security card and my bank routing information. I was like, I'm going to lose all my money. And then he's like, congratulations, you booked 3 out of 4 of these trailers, and nobody's ever done that with us before. And I was like, oh, cool. And back then he was just like, it still feels like you're just kind of doing an impression of Don, an impression of Hal Douglas, and all these, he's like, I feel like your own voice is in there somewhere. So his producer just worked with me till the epic voice came alive, and it was just, that was the signature voice. But in the meantime, I was doing a lot of other stuff, and he put me in contact with my current manager, and between there and there, it was just big opportunity after big opportunity. Again, because of YouTube, 2K Games was like, I already heard what I wanted. I saw your video of you do Optimus Prime in your car. I have this game called XCOM. I think you're perfect for the council guy. I was like, cool, no red tape, no auditions, all right, cool. That was my first AAA title, and then word just started to get around, John's really good. He doesn't just do the trailer voice, he can do lots of other stuff. And then eventually I met my best friend, Ryan Reynolds, and started doing his voice matching, and just ADR just blew up for me. All of a sudden it's like Marvel and Disney and this and this and that. Everybody's like, everybody wants a piece of the Bailey over here. Hey, how you doing? I got enough to go around. But yeah, and then meeting all these amazing people, and hopefully you didn't hear me gushing on you too bad earlier. I was bragging on our big voice actor experience. It was you and Steve at the waiting room in Paramount.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I felt like a fan Oreo cookie.
But we had just been doing Scratch together, right?
Yeah.
We're like, God, I hope I get that. What if we actually...
It was so funny because they're like, I hope I get the job. I'm like, I hope you get the job. like there's any
but
doubt.
we didn't know because there's celebrities always swooping in at the last
Well, see, you left first, and Steve and me were still left over, and I'd only ever booked Optimus before, and she comes out with a checklist like, I need to know all the characters you booked, and it's Steve, and he's like, done it, doesn't do it, done it. He's like, everybody he'd done. And I'm like, I've only got the crumbs. So at the end of the session, this is why I always say, fortune favors the bold, don't be scared to stand up. I had only auditioned for 2 characters that didn't even make it in. Starscream and Ironhide originally had a line. And I think I'd auditioned for Ratchet. It was one of the few that Steve had not done. And it's like, actually, would you mind if I recorded for some of these? I've been doing Transformers voices for like 30 years. I'm pretty good at some of these. And I started rolling a few of them off. And Travis Knight, I didn't know that was Travis Knight. Nobody told me. I didn't know what he looked like. So that's the director. I'm just like, it's just a booth guy at Paramount, whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, you're blowing my mind right now. You sound just freaking like him. I'm like, thank you.
He was so great
He was
to work
so cool.
with.
He's a
I
real
love
fan, by
that
the way.
guy.
He
Yeah.
loved his. They played like a full montage of our characters from the original cartoon for us for references. Like I didn't already know him, but the fact that he took the time to do that for all these characters showed that he really cared and he wanted to keep it in the Transformers G1 realm, and that's why Bumblebee movie was so incredibly good.
Yeah.
But it's just been like one thing after another. My second manager, Debbie Cope, you've probably heard.
Yeah.
She dragged me down to CESD, said sign this guy. Just they didn't even. They're like, oh okay. And then there you go. Next thing I know, I'm just like blown away by how massive this career has gotten, and it's every week I'm doing something crazy, and I'm like, oh crap, I know that guy. Oh no, I'm working on a Brad Pitt film. All right, sure, okay.
On The Simpsons, we do Zooms now, and I just want to take pictures of the screen the entire time. And I'm like, you
I know.
could get fired. Don't do that. Put your phone down. But I'm just like, oh my God, it's Nancy
Like
Kerrigan
all the
and Hank
secrets that
Azaria,
Michael
and
Bay.
they're talking in
I'm
the
not
box.
even allowed to say where I recorded for Michael Bay. It's like I can't even. I was scared to bring my phone inside.
Yeah, the doggies, the big doggies. Anyway, sorry. That was a long answer. We give long answers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can actually do an Optimus Prime voice because my theater.
Sure.
Well, yeah.
We have a microphone. We're about to. Rocky, you're gonna
there-
try out here. Go for it.
I am Optimus Prime, and frankly, I must say your voices sound awesome. Oh. Roll out.
Great.
That's awesome, man. Good job.